So what I'll do is I'll do a quick screen share and we'll go through those. We have maybe a third of the questions maybe are for screen share, and then we'll do some offline. First thing is Molly has done her 100 miler, but it
Wow.
wasn't a full 100 miler
It's not.
this last weekend here. So we did podcast about it, so we won't belabor that today. But if anyone's curious about how it all went, they can find out. I said to you, was there any like secret things you wanted to put on this?
No, I mean, I think like I guess the mental side of it is hard. Like it's been a weird couple days. I think like the least helpful thing has actually been the number of people that have like messaged me to be like, you probably feel like crap right now. So consider this my PSA to if you have a friend who doesn't make it through a race, or a spouse or whatever, don't put your feelings on them because I think it's a lot of people that are like well-meaning but keep saying things like, wow, you must feel like really questioning your fitness or like,
So versus saying like, "Are you feeling okay?" Or, "How you feeling?" Yeah, okay, well that's interesting. Okay, so it was otherwise a great event. We did some takeaways looking towards Unbound, which is coming up this weekend, which I think everyone should be like watching at least the summary and just sort of taking that in because it is sort of like I guess our world championships as off-road racers, whether you're a gravel racer, mountain bike racer, even our road racers, since gravel racing has essentially become Americanized. Road racing now at the highest level. I think there's something for everyone just to be like keeping an eye on as a student of the sport. So we do talk a bit just briefly towards Unbound and sort of the things I had left the few people we're coaching and doing plans for and consulting with who are doing the race. So we talked through that on this podcast. On the note of gravel rides, a few people that I work with are more into like rides versus races, events versus races. And so we are doing this up here in Collingwood. There's a couple different distances. It's called the Cranky Goat. It is July 11th. I thought this was July 11th. I guess it's July
that's
26th. Maybe I can do it. Okay, well, that's great news. I, for some reason, thought I had a conflict. This is news to me. I could have swore it was the 11th. There you go. So it's July 26th, and it's a gravel ride. And I think they say here there's a 70, 110. These are great roads up here. So if anyone's in the area or wants to travel, I think I saw Simona's on the call. She might be coming up to do some bike packing in this area. So there you go. People are traveling from all over the place to come to this area. And I do like to say we have some of the finest gravel roads. So I'll leave that there. We'll put that link in the show notes as always. And then I do for May, I'll just put this little promo here, this Instagram promo. We do have this promo for Women's Month, which is in Ontario Cycling. Our provincial body has like I don't think it's actually like an official women's weekend, but or month, but it was like Women's Month for Ontario Cycling.
yeah, very
And
specific.
then it was also Mother's Day. So I did this big promo, 50% single or triple. So that's obviously for people who are closer by to us. But if anyone's interested in skill stuff, that's sort of like a promo that is elapsing in 4 or 5 days, I guess. So there you go. We don't need to.
So you could get it before the end of May and do the session
Yeah.
after May.
And then I have this really odd and provocative thing that Ryan Leach is doing here. We had a question around dropper posts. Is it actually a question? Just sort of like it's a new thing for a lot of people, especially I coach people who've been like myself riding bikes for their whole life. So dropper posts have come in midway or later in our bike riding experience. And so some people don't use them very often, especially on the east coast of North America, where we don't like have giant mountains a lot of the time. So this is an exercise that does look really funny and
I was gonna
comical.
say this is really weird because it keeps playing.
And if you knew Ryan Leach, it makes it even funnier. He's a great guy, but this is just really funny. But I thought this is like a movement. So we call this like bike body separation. This is in the sort of the linear or sagittal plane, sort of fore and aft. But it's something that when we have our post dropped, we can really explore. Like at the far back end is sort of like a butt buzz, we sometimes call that, where like your butt's almost hitting the tire and then how far we can come forward as well, which you might see in like a bunny hop situation or like a big jump where you're really going vertical, where your hips are coming to the bars. So this is just again sort of fairly comical, but I thought this was like something when someone's getting used to standing up more, which all our gravel racers we're trying to get used to being up out of the saddle in the technical sections. And even though we might not have a dropper post, we can still explore the range. We can find balance on those pedals. You can see Ryan sort of like mostly staying in level pedals, but he is sort of like letting his cranks almost ratchet a little bit as he does this. So sort of like a dropper post getting used to it, but also sort of like balance or I don't know. It's sort of like a funny thing you could do across the field and really be provocative to people. Okay, next question.
Autopause.
Okay, this is like an example of just like what makes me like break into tears in the middle of my day most days is like I find a autopause file and it's just so sad.
I want
Uh,
to be clear, he actually does get like very near tears.
A-
It's
And
very,
the biggest problem is like if this one had power, it doesn't have power, so it's not quite so bad, but it just there's so much missing and like this person actually wasn't stopping that much. It was just like slower periods. The gray is just like the elevation profile. But then there's just these big chunks missing where you can't see if the heart rates like are they hiking, are they recovering, how fast did they recover? And so yeah, just don't run autopause is the thing.
but
And
what you were realizing is a lot of the Garmin's must have updated the firmware or something,
something
and
happened,
something
yeah.
happened where a lot of people had their autopause turned back on even though they had it off. So before your next ride, maybe just check.
Yeah,
Or next time you're stopped, just check that it doesn't autopause.
so new device or reset or what was the other thing that like people maybe started using like another profile and then you end up with either the auto lapse, which is almost equally it doesn't make me cry, but it does make me sad. And then the auto pause can be on automatically as well. And this is mostly like a Garmin problem, but not exclusively, but Garmin's the most over the top with like deciding that you need to have these things on. So as a brief reminder, it is something that's does like ruin the not ruin the power data, but will like make errors in the power data because if you imagine power coming through those gaps, essentially, can you let her in? The power would almost give you an average that's artificial. So it's sort of like you could end up with like weird spikes, like, oh, you did your 20-minute best power, but it's like you were taking breaks and standing still in the middle. And it's just like these weird artifacts that happen because time does continue to elapse even if you stop your timer. So yeah, so there's that. We have a whole post on autopause if you want to go through like the reasons and the philosophy of it, but I won't belabor that here today. But I will put a link in the show notes about the autopause page. But if you Google autopause consummate athlete, I think we have one of the top posts really on that. So there you go.
Similar note on the topic of bike computers, your workout screen on your bike computer.
So this is a German setup, I think. German?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is like a lap summary screen, which is really cool. You know, you can see like the 10 minutes and there's all sorts of screens. The Garmin's, the one positive thing about Garmin's is that they have lots of neat screens now that pop up and they do a better job of like when you add a power meter, they like give you a bunch of screens that are pretty good, but you can and should customize them. So we have this post and it's sort of reminds you to on a couple of things, including autopause which I'll link to this post as well. So you can also link to the autopause from this post. But the important thing today is just reminding you that you, especially as you're going outside, but I would say this applies even indoors. I always use my Garmin indoors, even though I might have like a Zwift or a Training Peaks virtual running, because that Garmin is always going to run and record and give me like a really nice file and lets me see the information I want to see. And as Molly said, the topic today is really having this interval setup where you have in bold lap time. And the thing is, you're like not training, like you're not doing intervals unless you can see a lap time. And this is less of a concern now because a lot of people do use the downloads, like the structured downloads from Training Peaks to their Garmin, and it sort of automatically will create laps. It'll say go and then it'll beep and do stuff for you. So you don't have to use a lap button. I used to always say lap button, but then that would ruin the download. So the lap time has to be visible or else it's very hard to pace yourself and know like I'm doing a 3 minute interval and I know that it's almost over or I need to pace myself differently. And that is like exponential returns on your racing and how well you'll do on pacing climbs and pacing sections of the race. And then the other thing is just making sure like there's been a bunch of people, and again, I don't know if it's Garmin's resetting or new devices or what, but just, oh, I wish I could have seen cadence while I was doing that interval, or I wish I could have seen current power while I was doing that interval. And I'm like, how have you been doing intervals for 10 years and this is something coming up? So it's okay to like stop and adjust it or whatever you have to do. Sometimes, again, it's like out of your hands in the workout and you do the best you can. But definitely you want to have sort of like I have here like a summary screen, sort of like what's happened in the ride. Maybe you have something that like when you're just riding forever, you just want certain things on the screen, an interval screen, and then there's like a race screen. Some people have a race screen as well. I don't generally do that, but a race screen might have something particular in it. Like it might be a split map screen with like your heart rate if you're pacing off of it and maybe the elapsed time or something like that. Bike packers might do, what would a bike packer do? Like direction, maybe you'd have like a compass and something like that. I don't know. there is no wrong answer, but you shouldn't have repeatedly like I wish I could see power. And then I think the last note on that one is just if you do load a workout and it loads up that workout screen, maybe there's like a gauge there, like that's nice. But if you're like, I really wish I could see my other screen, you can completely just go to the next screen. It doesn't ruin the workout if you go to your normal screens on a Garmin or a Coros is the same, Wahoo's the same. You can still scroll through all your data screens, even if it pulls up a new like workout screen that says like 200 watts, like aim for 200 watts or whatever it's saying. You're allowed, like it doesn't mess anything up and it'll still beep when you're on the next workout. But some people get into like I don't want to touch it while it's going through its workout, but it's fine. You can definitely just like flip around. So if you wanted to look at your lap screen during the workout, but then have it like run through it still works. It just might be a different display. Okay.
All right, details versus description. What is the workout?
Okay, we have a post on what is the workout, but it's an older post. But as we get outside, like it's sort of this transition, and some people have come to me over the winter, and some people need the reminder too. Maybe they've gotten a power meter over the last year. And so, what is your workout? Is like it's not this. This is the workout details that like a smart trainer would do, or that your Garmin might lead you through. But it's way too specific most of the time. Like I'm not expecting that. What I'm usually expecting is at least like a 3x8. I just noticed this workout has an error in it. Let's do that. Um, where I'm expecting like basically this is enough to go out and do this workout. So if you just press start, didn't load the workout, and you're like, today I have to go fast for 3x8, I bet you would create a really great workout that's basically like the workout. And that's what we call 80% as a passing grade. So always remember that. If you can't find the workout, whatever, like that's enough to do that workout well enough for pretty much everyone here. A little extra details is to read the description, and that's going to give you everything you need to know. Okay, what is fast? Okay, well, like that's a pretty serious heart rate to be up in that range, but I get it. Okay, there's like a range there. So I'll see, like maybe I'll get close to 90 and see if I can dip over that on the last one or towards the end of the interval. Maybe I'm a power person and I really want to know, oh, okay, so fast isn't like, it's not like way more than my threshold. It's just basically like my threshold. Okay, that's not like too bad. I can do that for 8 minutes. I think I can do that and maybe build it. And then you might have like, what is the recovery? Like, how long would you rest? Okay, I get that. Okay, like that's like maybe 2 or 3 minutes, whatever the time is to get back down the hill or something, right? So then you would know. And then again, you don't have to load the workout if you don't want to. You certainly can, but you don't have to, right? And that's sort of the takeaway there of like, what is your workout? What I'm expecting is 3x8 fast. And if you come back and it's not 3x8 fast and it's just you went to ride and there was no laps in the file, then that's a fail. But if you do a good job and you do have 3x8 where you worked concerted, in a strong effort and did 3x8, then that's great. You've done it. So what is the workout? Okay, that's that.
Okay.
Was there one more?
Fast downs and enduro rides.
Yeah,
So
I
when
did.
we go downhill fast, are we meant to be finding a very long section of trail over which to ride the fast down?
Right. So this is sort of like three different workouts. I wanted to also do a gravel one for the gravel folks who aren't mountain bikers, but all these ones that are sort of like today focus on technical aspects more than like climbing or like what the workout we just worked at. 3x8, like vigorous, like heart rate is up, like vigorously pedaling the whole time. These ones would be workouts where we could still say, okay, like what is the title? Okay, if I rode technical gravel, that would be about 80% of what I mean. But there are descriptions in there that say like things that you would do as a gravel rider that could be skills. I could take my jacket on and off and see if I can get it zipped up. I could go over a river. I could go through a place that requires me to dismount. I could ride in a group. I could ride no hands. I could work on my navigation, either like do a route that I've never done and follow my Garmin would be sort of like in there, right? There's lots of stuff. And that's without even like obviously it says twisty and technical, and we could talk bunny hops or cornering or skids. But that's sort of the idea with a technical gravel ride is to not ride in a perfectly straight line, to try and find a bit of challenge along the way. But obviously, if you're limited, like things like taking off a jacket or these types of things, even dismounts, could be done even on like indoor rollers or something like that too, if you were really limited. So that's gravel. There's some links to YouTube always in that too. This workout that they're sort of asking this question about is this like fast downs. And so this is like an enduro styled workout where rather, again, what's the title? Technical fast downs. Okay, so I'm going to go fast on the downhill. I can ride. This is sort of like the range for our typical mountain bike ride. And then I can get a bit more details if I go to the description, a little more idea. Okay, all right. So like he said, oh, I can even walk up, I might even have to walk up harder climbs today because I'm not supposed to focus on the uphill, but I'm going to try and really like put extra focus on descending. Okay, I get that, right? And so maybe I have to go to the local ski hill or like wherever there's going to be enough descending, right? And so that would be the idea with that workout. And so it's sort of turning how a lot of people think about training on like flipping it around. Like unless someone's an enduro racer, then this would be like one of our bread and butter workouts, but it's one that I like to include in the week where we sort of, it's not a super hard ride, but we are sort of focusing on the descending. And that could get into mechanical stuff like tire pressure and this sort of thing as well, obviously, to sort of like enhance like that enduro training. Okay, so that's that. So I think that's the end of the screen share is what I have there as a note.
Yep.
I'll try and figure out how to do that. Stop the share. Okay. All right, now we're into the questions. Doing well.
Okay, so someone had asked just about thoughts on creatine and essential amino acids. Do you want to go into the whole question or just go with creatine for?
Yeah, maybe we keep it short. I don't know. So we have a couple podcasts I'll include as well. It does come up fairly frequently. It's big in the menopause research. It's big, period, I think,
I was
right?
gonna say, I feel like you have several athletes of like all different age and
Discipline, yeah.
discipline and like elite masters, like widespread, and creatine has come up with a bunch of them in the last like 3 or 4 weeks.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's one of these ones like the downside. I say like a lot of these questions, like if there's a real big downside, like you're going to get popped for doping or something really bad will happen to your body. Creatine is not really one of those things. There isn't really like a lot of symptoms or like things that go wrong with it. It just may not work and may not be worth your time and money for some people.
But
Uh,
it is relatively inexpensive compared to a lot of other supplements.
Right.
So
Yeah. So it's one of those ones that we probably don't even need to talk a ton about. You just can give it a try, right? And see what you think. And I always say, like, you want to believe in these supplements if you're going to take them, because that's a big part of the benefit is the placebo and believing in them. So it is one that's well researched and is worth a try, I guess, for some people. And yeah, I don't know if there's a ton else to it.
no, I think the big thing is like it does take like I've been using it for quite a while. I wouldn't say I notice any change so much as I'm not decreasing anything. So I feel like at my age, I'm kind of in that weird balance of like, is progress a lack of decline?
Now, when you do like your strides or something like that, you haven't noticed any change in like your speed?
I wouldn't say so.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, that's that. I was going to say one other thing about creatine. What was I going to say? Oh, so usually it's just like the dosage would be on the thing, and there's sometimes a debate about like a loading. It gets like complicated, but basically it's just like one scoop. It'll come with a 5 gram scoop. You take 5 grams a day. Most people will take
Between
it.
3 and 5.
Most people will take it after their workout with like some carbohydrate. Molly just does hers in the morning, which we usually have carbohydrate in the morning too. So it's sort of just whenever it fits. It's not one that's like super particular about the time of day. It doesn't have to be post-workout or pre-workout or anything like that. It's just more consistent that you want it. As Molly said, it sort of takes like a month, they say, to sort of like get it fully in there. So
Yeah. And don't worry about the loading phase or anything like that. Just start doing the
right, right.
average
Yeah.
daily dosage.
Yeah, exactly. So that's that. The essentially amino acids are fairly well supported, but most of the use cases, even though people try and edge it into different use cases, like athletes or something like that, most of the use cases for an essential amino acid, there's sort of like essential and non-essential amino acids. There's ones that are like supplements that would have all the acids, and amino acids are just the building blocks of protein, basically. And so what they're saying is like this is like a broken down protein would be the way to think about it. And so the use cases that I've seen, like some people would swear by it, but a lot of times it's like when you're not able to consume a lot, maybe you're becoming very elderly and frail, and they're trying to just get enough protein in, like enough amino acid building blocks for your body in, but the person isn't eating very much. Maybe this is like a illness, injury type situation. That's usually like where you will see these used because the supplement sort of general rule is to use food first. And if you are consuming a good, well-rounded diet with lots of protein sources, especially meats, which are complete proteins, you would be getting a lot of these essential amino acids. So it would be hard to suggest that you need to supplement to get more. At some point, you are getting enough amino acids. And then on top of that, even before going to essential amino acids, something like a whey protein, again, is a complete protein, has all the amino acids, but then it has a lot of other benefits as well. Probably taste is one, and what you get for your money
I
as
was gonna
well.
say less expensive and easier to find, especially if you're looking for like the certified for sport ones.
Sure. Yeah. So there you go. So that's essential amino acids. It's a good question. And then the other sort of related thing here was around like power fade as we age. And yes, like this is probably going to happen. Sometimes we get a little too like ambitious about like our power fading. You know, we're finally getting old. And again, it does happen, and sometimes it can happen significantly in a year. And sometimes that corresponds with like, oh, we got sick or we had a big injury that kept us off our bike. So untangling how much of it is like a reduced training load and how much of it is aging or how much of it is aging and the return from an injury that's caused the power, right? There's sort of like a two sides to that. There's the genetics, the aging, and then there's this again, like sort of like training load. And sometimes we can't do anything. It's not that you're lazy with the training load. You might have been injured. It's hard to say. But all that to say, the one thing with power, I asked Molly about her strides and stuff, is like we need to be collecting data. So sometimes we'll go outside, but this year we don't have a power meter on our mountain bike, say. Then we might not be collecting the like I'm losing my power, I'm losing my speed. If we're not paying attention and measuring in a way like a maximal way, then any prediction or any actual measurement of our power, our speed, uh, isn't there, right? So sometimes we run into a measurement problem as much as we run into like we are actually like weaker or slower. And then there is the like if you do think you haven't been doing like your speed work, your intervals, your strength training, your jump training, whatever is sort of related to maintaining and building these qualities, get back doing it, right? It's the best time to start is now. And you can see progress, remember, at any age. I always quote that study that Balat did with a 100-year-old gentleman on the track, and he increased his VO2 max, the thing that's supposed to erode 1% every year of your life, which isn't true. This person increased their VO2 max by, I think it was like, was it 3 or 4 milliliters of oxygen per
Yeah,
kilogram? No?
I think so.
Yeah. So he went from like 33 to 36, which is, in the grand scheme of things, isn't very high. But when you're 100, that is a very high VO2 max. But he went faster on the track. He set the world record, beat his own world record at 102 or 103 years old. And so what's happening there is like the training still benefits a person regardless of age, but he may also be seeing in the background a decline. So it's almost like debits and credits for the accountants on the call. uh, we have money going in and money going out. So the VO2 max is aging out a little bit, but then he trained and trained and trained. And so he got 3 better, but then lost zero point 0.5, say, for that year. So he was 2.5 better on the year. So I think as the accountants say, we're in the black. Yeah. All right. Okay. So doom and gloom.
Bullish or bearish, but
There you go. So not all hope is lost, but that's sort of the idea is that like before we get too dramatic, like it's the spring, make sure you go out, do some training, do some intervals, and then you want to get like a decent test in there to sort of see where you stand, measuring the power. So there you go.
and anything to add with the how can I train now to maximize my ability to ride more later?
Yeah, this was the demon of getting old. This is sort of a different question.
But kind of the same question, right?
Yeah.
Like,
So and this person was like they want to work now, but then they want to be able to enjoy their bike later, I think was the weird twist.
well, I think their thing was like they don't want to wait till they suddenly have all this time to ride, only to find that their VO2 max has declined due to the aging
I feel like
situation
that's
and
like
its
the screw.
previous
That's
like
like the
state.
screw with life, right? You got to
Yeah.
work. You got to work all your good years. Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's like a philosophical thing that you could look at. The thing that I really believe in that is consummate athlete is like just being careful with like how deep we go on stuff. Just being careful with how much trainer riding. Everyone will know that I nag and nag and nag about like not too many rides that are over 90 minutes. Being consistent, keeping our strength training in for sure, keeping a mix of sports, things like jumping and things like that. I think those are as much as we can. There's going to be a time where some of these things need to be limited or be cautious with them. But that sort of well-rounded athletic abilities is going to give you lots of movement options and prevent like large periods of time where you can't do anything. And so that's where we think that the cross training is beneficial because it does give you different communities and different ways to move to be consistent, right? So that's part of our 4 C's is that idea of cross training. So I think that's the main thing, but just being careful. I think that like just you don't want to be like burning it where we're doing like 20 100 milers in a year or something like that, right? That just strikes me as not a great strategy to be doing this in a long time or for the long run. So a little bit over the long haul.
There you go. Okay, hill training. When would you use hill repeats versus building a hilly route? Is it just a matter of efficiency, or are there different training outcomes?
Yeah, this is one of your depends, I guess, right? Like it's so much. I said to you, like it depends on who the person is and what you're trying to do, but then like are they stressed on that day? What is their environment like? So it's a big depends, but we'll try and like hash out some flow charts. But I thought maybe you could speak towards like how I don't think you do repeats per se that often, like on the same stretch of trail or same road. Do you use the same stretch of road a lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I don't do them like weekly or anything, but yeah, when I have hill repeats, I always go over to we have this one road, 6 line extension. I do pretty much all of them on there for the run. If I was riding, I would probably opt for more of a hilly route, but for the run, that's just easy. I
Mm,
think to your philosophical or it depends point, like the mentality, it kind of depends on my day, right? Like sometimes the hill repeat, just going up and down the same one, is actually more relaxing than having to think through the route and follow the route and be paying attention. And then flip side, sometimes I actually find it really stressful to have to keep going up and down the same
right.
hill and you feel worse on one and you feel bad about yourself and all that kind of stuff versus if you're just doing a hilly route, you don't really have as much like comparison, I guess.
Yeah, those are some considerations. So the way I think about it often is like if I'm getting really trying to push things, then I'll, especially physiologically, then that's when I'm thinking more hill intervals because I want it almost like the trainer where I want to be able to really see how far I'm making it up that hill. That's one of the big benefits of doing a hill repeat is you can see like when am I at 4 minutes or however long the interval is, am I making it up the hill or am I getting to the same stop sign every time? And I can fight for that. And that's very much like a race, right? You sort of have this carrot or this invisible person you're chasing up the hill, and power does give you that when you are on a variable route. But I do think that that's one of the things is it just almost like the indoor trainer gives you this like you need to make it up this hill in this time, and you'll see the power numbers if you do a good job on it, and the time to get up the hill are like every time it's like 8 minutes if it was an 8 minute interval 8:01 7:59 and then you can really dig and get a 7:55 to finish and that's quite valuable. Now it's also very like intensive. I said to you like you need to be like pretty motivated to be pushing like that, but it is very beneficial, but you need to be careful just like the indoor trainer. So if I'm usually feeling like oh, I've been like pushing too hard, then I would maybe go and do like a couple different hills and just divide them up or the hill Molly mentioned is a little longer, so maybe I do like 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes and just work my way up so that once I'm done my intervals, say these were 3 minute intervals, I'm really doing a lot of different intervals then I would be at the top of the hill and then I could go mountain biking as my reward once I get to the top of the hill at the end of the workout, right? So I sort of just like work my way up the hill without comparing any of them.
I guess my big question would be like, which is the one that you're most likely to finish the workout doing?
Yeah.
Because for some people, you get, 2 out of your 4 hill intervals done on that one hill, and
And you give
you're
up.
at the bottom. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you might as well, you're gonna go home. Then, flip side, some people kind of pull the parachute if they're just doing a hilly route. They just kind of soft pedal up the hill because it doesn't feel quite as much like they need to do the harder effort on the hill because it's
Right.
just kind of part of the route. So I think to me, it's which one is going to make you more likely to actually complete the workout is probably the right
And
answer.
that's a great answer too. Like that 80% as a passing grade, like can you do 80% with the strategy you're coming up with? And sometimes I like that solution. And I know for sometimes as an athlete, you're like, "Fuck, just tell me what to do. But like sometimes that solution is like, I want you to solve it given all the constraints you have in your day, the time you have available, the terrain you have locally. And that terrain is going to really determine it. If you just have one hill and then it's pancake flat and you were supposed to do hill intervals, if you just go up that hill and keep riding, well, then you only have one hill interval. You're not going to do any more. But if you have a nice rolling route and you know you're going to get that 4x4 on this route and it's going to be pretty good, maybe a couple of the recoveries will just be like a little plus minus, then great, go do that, right? Like that's completely fine. But there's sort of that like you want to see, can I do this workout as intended or close to as intended with this strategy? The other, I guess, framework or just thing I'll sometimes do is like during the week, a lot of times I'm more tight. So I'll go to the local hill and I know it takes 15 minutes to get there. I'll do my intervals. It maybe takes 20 to 40 minutes to do the intervals. And then I'll come burning back home 15 minutes. And I know I can be home in between 75 and 90 minutes on the dot. So it's like the trainer. It's predictable. If anything happens, I'm not that far away. The workout is super quality, super dense. I get it all done. It's like a great gravel hill, but it's nothing fancy.
I guess realistically, that's why I do that hill too.
Yeah.
It's the only hill that's like it's the closest hill to us. Otherwise, I'd be too far afield by the time I finished my hilly route that coming home, I'd have like an 8 mile cool down.
Yeah, and it's peaceful. There's not a big bunch of car traffic, so that's great. And then on the weekend, okay, I have a bit more time. If I get a flat in the middle of nowhere, it's I don't have to necessarily be back instantly. And a lot of times the workouts on the weekend are maybe a bit more like a look like a gravel race or look something a bit more variable where I might do a lot of people have been doing 3x20s. I've done a bunch of these big long tempo workouts. And that's something that like, okay, well, actually what I want to do is get out in this to feel a bit more like a gravel race. So I'm going to pick places. This route will let me do 3x20, but as Molly always points out, not every interval needs to be on a hill. And I'm going to make this a lot like a gravel race. There's going to be a couple of corners, a couple of little sectors even come up in the middle of it. Maybe there's a couple of downhills I need to pedal really fast on and go really fast and tuck in and be really arrow. There's just going to be a bit more variability. But when I look at my file at the end, I like to think that it looks like I did 3x20 and it's not perfect, but it's pretty good, right? Like I still can see my lap average. I'm still hitting those lap averages. Sometimes, I hit a stoplight, I have to press pause and it's a 10-minute interval, and then I do another 10-minute interval. That's all okay. It's a little more variable. But that's maybe the other thing is to think like once in the week, you do one that's like really, really intense and really like focused, really maybe focused on the physiology, and then maybe one interval set or workout, I should say, that's a bit more practical or specific, you could say, or fun or adventurous, or however you want to say variable. Cool. Okay, one more.
One more. Why am I cramping?
Just a simple one.
Recently did a 5 hour gravel race, and about 3.5 hours in, I started to cramp in my hamstring. I've done several 6 hour training rides, even pre-rode the course without any issues. But race effort led to cramping, even though they do hard interval sessions weekly. Yeah.
Oh, and they say we're awesome. So
Oh,
there you go. We better have a good answer.
I don't have a good answer.
So, I mean, a lot of times cramping will happen in races. And so that's like interesting, right? Because there's something there around like the intensity or the duration, and your body has just sort of hit a point where it's saying we can't relax anymore. And muscle contraction is a contraction and a relaxation. There are things like people will get into the salts and the calciums and all the electrolytes. And that could be part of it. We could try something like a pickle juice or the cayenne. There's all these like tricks people will say that help break the cramp or whatever. And those are worth knowing if you are someone who tends to cramp. But our first line of defense is, as this person sort of head off, like, are you doing enough endurance training? Are you doing enough intensity? And then looking at the other variables that they sort of like, that's like a volume intensity. But we also want to say, like, have you been climbing or no? Have you been off road? Yes or no? Is it starting to look like the race, right? As much as they said they pre-rode, which is interesting, right? Because it does seem like they're on the terrain. Those would be often what I see. And then the thing that usually comes up then is, okay, well, in the race, you have added more intensity, more stress, more activation. And then what usually happens, which is I think we talked about on the podcast a little bit today, and certainly in the last couple of weeks, we've talked about people will go way too hard for the first 2 hours, and then they'll also not eat because there's no time to fuel, eat or drink or fuel or all the words that are associated with that. So they've done two things that are very, very poor.
Basically, guarantee cramping, yes.
Well, not guarantee, but guarantee something. Your body is going to hit a limitation because those two things you've overpaced. So you're doing your 20-minute power, your 1 hour power for the first 2 hours of a 6 hour gravel race or whatever it is, a 5 hour gravel race. And then you haven't put fuel in, and you've now burnt through all your fuel in about 90 minutes. A lot of us will have about 90 minutes of glycogen stores or sugar stores. And so if we're not putting any, certainly, or very much, we're not sticking to our fueling plan, then this is often why, or the first thing I would go after with this person, because it does sound like they're doing a lot of the things. They're doing some volume, they're doing some intensity. I'm assuming they're hitting like enough hills and specific cadences. Remind me to do cadences. That's the other one. But that pacing and fueling in the first 2 hours. So we want to slow it down a little bit to your speed. And then we want to make sure we're hitting those fueling targets, especially early in the race, because that's what's going to give us the energy at the end of the race when there's the moves, the big hill to finish, that sort of thing. Anything else aside from cadence?
No, I think that pretty much would be everything I would say.
Okay, the only other thing I've noticed, and you if I've been nagging you about your cadence being under 80 RPM, the thing I see is that a lot of people will train down in these lower, we'll say lower, moderate to low. Most people are moderate cadences. So something like a 70 to 80 is very common. A new cyclist will pedal at 70 when they do studies. 70 is actually a fairly efficient cadence, but that doesn't mean it's a fast cadence or the best cadence for power production or for like an efficient like cyclist who has developed coordination over time. The thing that happens with a lot of cyclists is when we get in a group and we start working vigorously, that cadence starts coming up. And the problem is that a lot of times I'll see these same people who are just insist they want to pedal 70 to 80 RPM, often on trainer road, then get to the race and they try and do that 2 hours hard with no fueling, also pedaling 10 to 15 RPM faster than they're used to. And as I said, cramps are an inability to relax the muscle. The muscle, right, contracts. And what that I think I'm not wrong that this is a factor for some of these people because they all also have cramping that comes up sometimes, is that the muscle now is contracting faster, right? And so if you contract it faster and faster and faster, that is a good way to do a cramp. So this is why when I'm saying you gotta do your speed work, you gotta try and bring that up, especially when we're indoors on the trainer and we can shift one gear easier. That's another thing that I would go after probably with this person is see if they're a bit of a grinder in training, and then suddenly little like fast 90 RPM in the group.
Or just grind the entire time.
Right, right. Okay, well, those are some fantastic questions. We didn't have any come through the chat, which is okay because I think we're pretty much out of time, but we can always submit more questions going forward. But I think that's a fantastic AMA. Thank you to everyone who came here live and then everyone who watches it in post, assuming I recorded it well, which is always a crapshoot.
You've got this, dear.
Awesome. Links will be in the show notes. Thanks to everyone. You know where to find me. Watch Unbound and watch Molly's Queen Stage summary of Unbound will be coming for the women's race. So watch that later in the day on Saturday. And good on y'all. Thank you for being here. We'll talk to you soon.